Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Risk Matrix with myself, Dr. Martin, and my companion, James Junkin. Hi, James.
Hey, good morning. Roll Tide. I don't want to rub it in. I really don't. But winter is gone. It's out of here in Louisiana. It's 84 degrees. It was a little chilly this morning. It was like 62, so I'm still trying to stay warm, but winter is gone out.
Yeah, we just got another 10 inches snow up here in the Northeast, so we're at about 45 or so for the year, and it's snowing today too. So thanks for that. As you can see, we have a guest on today, Marcus. We'll get to you in a second. We're going to be talking about Marcus's company and his innovations that he's been making in the sleep space and fatigue. But first, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor and who powers us, Veriforce. Veriforce, thank you for letting us do this and bring um, thought leadership to our listeners. And before we get into the show, James, what do you got ripped from the headlines?
Been a lot of activity here lately in the news related to occupational safety and health, and something that popped up from the Federal Highway Administration is really not something we talk about a lot, which is transportation safety. And really, probably the most dangerous thing we do as individuals every day is drive. But this particular press release is related to a survey by the Federal Highway Administration related to over-the-road truck drivers and trucking operations managers. It's centered around what they call Jason's Law. It's been a law since 2012. It's named for a New York-based truck driver, Jason Rivenberg, who was murdered in 2009 during a robbery after parking his truck in an abandoned South Carolina gas station. Then that gas station was known to be used by other truckers to rest in order to comply with federal hours of service regulations. So they're conducting a survey related to the lack of available truck parking. And the Highway Administration is calling this a national safety concern, saying that fatigue drivers who struggle to find spaces that are safe for them to park probably continue on the road or seek unsafe parking locations such as the shoulder on the road. So if you're interested in that, you have drivers or you are a fleet manager, I would really encourage you to participate in the survey again about Jason's Law from the Federal Highway Administration. Um, that's out there for you. Hopefully, you can find that survey link online, and let's see if we can get better places for drivers to stop and rest.
All right, thanks for that, James. So we're going to jump right in, Marcus. I am not going to try your last name. I'm going to let you do it for me. Marcus
De Guingand.
de Gengund.
Gangong, yeah.
Gengund. He comes to us today, and he's going to talk a little bit about his company. James, you want to give him a little background?
Uh, Absolutely. You know, your company is one that I found very interesting through our partnership that we have in the UK. And Rupert with the Veriforce team introduced us. And I believe the name of your company is Third Pillar of Health. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, what is Third Pillar of Health?
So we are a company that looks at sleep and fatigue in working populations. So we've worked with a wide variety of organizations in lots of different industries. We've done quite a lot of work in transportation, in construction, in policing, but also as sort of office-based workers and knowledge economy workers. I guess our oldest application is our sleep health self-assessment, which I think, James, you've had a look at already. And we've used that for sort of over 11,500 participants from wide range of industries, and it's been really popular and really successful for us. We're now working with Transport for London on the fourth round, and each round will last about 18 months. And what we've seen is in the people that participated twice, we've seen improvements in all of their key metrics. So the sleep duration, sleep quality, daytime sleepiness, and lifestyle factors. So I guess that's where we started, and then more recently we've done a couple of major studies of fatigue in construction and in people who drive for work.
So you said 2 rounds, Marcus. I assume they take the sleep study questionnaire once. And what do you attribute the change in habits or the change that you see after they take it the second time?
Yeah, so the only intervention is the report that they receive. So they basically get a 10-page report, and it's all sort of really sort of clearly laid out, sort of traffic light, sort of red bad, green good, amber somewhere in between. So people get a really easy, quick snapshot of what I guess they're doing well or what they're not. So, for instance, someone might say like, "I like to have a nightcap to help me to sleep at night," and then if they do that, they appear in the red. And they can download a fact sheet on kind of how alcohol impacts on our sleep. And we've got lots of different fact sheets, around lifestyle factors and also things like menopause and stress and all this sort of stuff as well. So yeah, if people want to dig deep into something, they can do it through the fact sheets as well.
I think most people know whether they have a good night's sleep or not. But what I found very interesting in the assessment that I took uh, was I knew that I was going to probably score very low in sleep quality and sleep time spent
He
asleep.
doesn't sleep,
I,
Marcus.
I've never been able to sleep well. I just don't. And my mother will tell you, ever since I was a little child, I get up in the middle of the night, walk around the house, and I still do that. So, but what I found interesting is not only did it highlight the problem, it gave me some pointers toward solutions for the problem. Let's talk about the problem as a whole, because I think fatigue does not just affect the individual. Fatigue also affects the quality of life of people at home and the safety of workers themselves and those around them. So, what does your research look like as far as fatigue as a problem in workspaces?
So yeah, what we've found, so the study that we did across the construction, people who drive for work, we found that sleep health is pretty less than ideal in a large percentage of the population. So 48% of the workforce that we surveyed are getting less than the minimum 7 hours of sleep a night. 81% are carrying a sleep debt. So that means they're not meeting their sleep need over a week or a shift cycle. We found that 4% of responses so there's 2 questions that we asked in the studies, 2 main questions. One was the Karolinska Sleepiness Scale, which I think people will be pretty familiar with. And the second question was to what extent fatigue impacts or is likely to impact performance at work. So 4% of all responses we received said that fatigue was either very or extremely likely to impact performance at work. And 6% indicated a KSS score of 7, 8, or 9, which indicates high levels of sleepiness. So I guess what we're seeing consistently is fatigue is an issue. And I think you guys, again, will probably be aware that estimates suggest that 20% of road traffic collisions are fatigue related. And there was a recent study that itself looked at 27 other studies that suggested that fatigue would be a factor in 13% of workplace injuries. But I guess if we asked the audience on this podcast today, what percentage of your accidents and incidents were fatigue related, they probably wouldn't know. There aren't many organizations that know that. But if they were aware that the figures were 20% or 13%, then I'm pretty sure organizations would be having a discussion at board level about how they can minimize the risk. I guess at the moment, organizations don't have a tool to effectively measure and manage fatigue, so it's very difficult for them to know how much of a problem it is.
So, I'll jump in here with this. I've had incident investigations that we question whether or not fatigue was a factor. And many times in the industries Dr. Martin and I work in, construction, the oil and gas industry, these typical jobs, these workers are not always there on site. They have long commutes to the location. Many times they're working 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, sometimes 7 days a week, 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And then we have an incident. But without a diagnostic tool, there's really no way other than to go back and to interview and do questionnaires and things to determine whether there was a sleep deficit. But how common do you find that fatigue is a major contributing factor that in the motivations or the let me put this in the behaviors, the at-risk behaviors of workers?
Yeah, so I mean, we on the back of the two studies we've built a new biomathematical model, and that's going to have three modules. So one of those modules is an accident and incident investigation. So basically, a standardized set of questions to establish whether fatigue was a contributory factor. So hopefully, once we've got some data coming through from that, it'll be really interesting to dig into what level are kind of at high risk or very high risk of fatigue. So at the moment, we can't say that with any great certainty, but at least it's just. I think hopefully we're launching it at the end of next week. This new app, so great timing to be on your podcast. So we will have a tool organizations can use to dig deep into it.
So it seems to me that this would be a really good, a key point to discuss with operations managers because, for example, in the construction industry where I do most of my work, um, the thought is given to getting the work done, right? And there are a limited pool of people who can get certain work done. And so we do use them 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours. And the gentlemen and women who do these jobs, they gladly take the hours and get the job done. But I think um, one of the things that safety managers could take from your survey is a discussion with operations managers about yes, the job needs to get done, but there is a cost involved in continuing to drive workers beyond the level of fatigue that they should be using on the job site. More accidents, more incidents, um, higher workman's comp costs, higher incident related costs, costs of redoing work or having to stop work. So I'm trying to relate this to what some of our listeners do, that this could be an integral tool in having discussions with people who schedule and manage the work. That's my kind of takeaway from what your studies are saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, we need to address it a bit more. I mean, the National Safety Council estimates that fatigue costs $1,800 per employee per year. And that's in absenteeism, workers' comp, but also productivity. So it's a huge, huge cost. And I think, as you say, if naturally we kind of understand that when we're fatigued, we take shortcuts. It might be that, especially in a construction site, let's say you've got to do a job and you want to get the job done as quickly as possible. And maybe the equipment that you should be using is a couple of 100 yards away. And if you're tired, you're not going to do that. You're not going to get the right equipment. You're just going to use whatever you've got near you just to try and get it done. So, yeah. And the accidents and injuries, as you say, have costs and they can shut down a site. And on a big project, that's extremely expensive thing to happen.
So at $1,000 a person, I'm just thinking of one of my clients, $1,000 per person. If they have 100 employees, they could add an extra laborer or an extra skilled worker for that money, right?
Yeah,
And
comfortably.
still be even Steven on the payroll, right? But
Yeah.
but not be taxing the other workers as hard by adding additional hands.
Well, I echo that, but I also know a lot of my good friends work in the trades, and especially when they're travelers, they don't want you to cut those hours. They're pressing for those hours. They're on the road. They're away from their family. They don't want to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They want to get into overtime pay. They want to be able to make as much money as they can to support their families. And there needs to be some balance there into getting into what's reasonable. Certainly, companies, if we can hire an extra worker and avoid paying overtime, that's a benefit to the organization. But that's also a detriment to people who are working out there on the road. So I'm fond to say I stole this from Fred Manuel. Hazards are best controlled in the design and planning of the work, right? We need to think about what we're asking workers to do and strike some sort of balance. There have been numerous studies that NIOSH has done related to oil and gas workers, the transportation time to get to job sites of being over an hour one way. So that's 2 hours of driving time. That's 10 hours of working in the heat, in the cold, manual labor, which is fatiguing the body, and there just becomes this big sleep deficit. And I've seen it directly related to fatality incidents. Um, some that have investigated. I think the National Transportation Safety Board often cites fatigue, but many times when we think of fatigue, we think about fatigue driving, but it's really more comprehensive than that. So, in your research outside of driving, where have you seen fatigue contributing to lack of productivity, perhaps even incidents? And could you elaborate on some of those other type jobs that you think it's a major factor?
Yeah, so I mean, as I think I said, we've done quite a lot of work in policing, and there's been some great research done. There's a chap called Professor Brian Villa in the US who's done a lot of really good stuff in policing around some of the outcomes, and there's studies there that have shown that even in shoot or don't shoot scenarios in tests that people make the wrong decisions when they're tired and fatigued. Construction, I think, as Dr. Martin has mentioned, we understand how that how fatigue fits in. The NHTSA says there's 50,000 fatigue-related injury collisions a year on the roads in the US. So we find that there's significant fatigue, all through a shift, and no organization is immune to it. So there is a kind of a sleep deprivation epidemic. In 2014, the Centers for Disease Control called sleep deprivation and public health issue. So it's a massive issue, and I just think you're right. You can push people, but eventually, it stops. There has to be a break at some point, and the results can be catastrophic. And you're right. We have to perhaps save people from themselves, almost like by not by not allowing them to do shift after shift, 12 hour.
That's fun.
So you did mention something earlier that I found interesting. You talked about knowledge workers, right? And I guess that's where maybe James and I come in. I do a little bit of field work. I don't know how much he does, but knowledge workers, that also introduces another piece to the puzzle of construction, oil and gas, whatever, because the schedulers, the planners, those type of people, if they're not on their game, they may miss something in the office that may affect the field in an adverse way.
Absolutely. It's very easy to understand how poor decisions made in office translate to site quite quickly. Yeah, I totally agree. And then that was perhaps one of the surprising findings, is that we always focus on most of the time on the people on site or on the tools doing the jobs. But actually, we need to be much more considerate about how the impact of fatigue in office-based workers impacts safety as well.
That'd be an interesting study. I would be very interested to see, now that we've transitioned to a lot of work from home environments, what the data showed as far as fatigue for those workers before, when they were coming to the office and performing their jobs, and there was a clear cutoff time. And now, as someone who works from home a lot, there doesn't seem to be a cutoff time. I just keep working until something else comes up, and I
Unfortunately, I think that data's lost, James. That data from before is lost, and now we have what we have.
So something we did find in the sleep assessment was during, I guess, lockdown, when people were working from home for the first time, we actually saw, especially in female respondents, improvements in a lot of the key sleep metrics. And I was kind of asking, I guess the people that have taken it and my clients what they thought it was, and especially for the women, they were like, well, I don't feel like I don't have to get as dressed up so much. I don't, have to take the kids to school. I don't have to put on makeup or whatever it might be. So actually people are getting more time in their day, especially at the beginning of a day. So they could sleep a little bit longer and get a bit more sleep. So that was quite interesting. So maybe the work from home has the ability to improve our sleep.
Let me ask you a little bit about the key indicators that you talk about. Once James takes the study and uh, he feels miserably, right?
Yeah.
Which he said he did. What are the key indicators in there that you counsel people on, or for lack of a better term, that um, are the things that you see affect sleep quality and quantity the most?
So we do, in terms of the quality side, we do screening for sleep disorders, so sleep apnea, insomnia, and restless leg syndrome. So what we find is that 22% of people are at risk of sleep apnea but have not been diagnosed, and 50% of people are at risk of insomnia but again haven't been diagnosed. We look at a lot of the lifestyle factors, so things like caffeine, exercise, stress, um, nutrition, healthy eating, all these sort of things that can help. Gadget use, especially using gadgets in bed prior to sleep. So all of these things that can impact on sleep. And then, as I said, if they appear in the red, they can download a fact sheet. They can understand how caffeine or alcohol or whatever it might be impacts on our sleep. So we find the lifestyle factors do feed in to the sleep. But also, another interesting thing we found was when we asked questions around life satisfaction, which we use as maybe a proxy for mental health, there is a very strong correlation between average life satisfaction scores and sleep prior to work. So if you sleep 7 to 9 hours, or those people who slept 7 to 9 hours a night had a average life satisfaction score that was 1.7 times greater than those sleeping less than 5 hours a night, which was quite an interesting finding.
Yeah,
This
I,
is
I
something. Go ahead, Dr. Martin. I'm
I was
pausing.
just gonna say often wonder if in retrospect, uh, had had we continued without the use of cell phones and tablets and things that we can carry with us, um, how much better we probably would be off at bedtime, right? Because I'm the doom scroller. I'm the Instagram person who's looking at all the cat videos and dog videos, all those
Well,
kinds of things, and I know that's a huge factor, right? Whereas, back in the day, I'm old enough to say this, 70s, 80s, and 90s, you just went to bed
you
Yeah.
might have the book.
and a book, right?
Yeah.
Which is, as far as I know, is conducive to kind of inducing that sleepy effect.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I think it is an issue. I think you're right. The doom scrolling, it's kind of what we do. So there's two different schools of thought on whether the blue light that emitted by our devices impacts our ability to get to sleep. And it's not particularly clear, but it is the sort of things that we read. And especially, as you said, if you're doom scrolling or you're doing stressful activities or work or stuff that's going to wind you up before you go to bed, it's obviously not going to help at all. And it's the amount of hours that you can lose, literally all minutes and hours, half an hour, 1 hour suddenly gone all of a
Agreed.
sudden, just scrolling on your phones.
Agreed. What's your phone number? I'll send you a few cat videos, but you'll get them in the morning where you are.
There you go.
Yeah.
You and Ray. One of the takeaways from my report uh, that I received, it said well rested people will report that they fatigue rarely or never interferes with their daily work activities. However, the one caveat is that it's been shown that we are very poor at recognizing our sleep deprived performance impairment. And then I looked at my numbers and it says my sleep debt is about 1.17, I think was the number, hours per day, every day. And once you start adding that up over a period of a month, you start getting into, oh, I'm over a day each month in lack of sleep. And then the following month, that's 2 days. And it just becomes, really something that is, I would say, if we had to calculate it to my alertness and compared to others, I have a massive sleep deficit. But I've always just known that I have trouble sleeping, but I didn't realize, it might be affecting alertness during the day, and I just don't notice it. And maybe other people notice it, but I don't notice it. I just thought it was a really cool takeaway that the caveat has been shown that people think they're alert and it's not affecting them during their work day, but we're really poor at self-diagnosing.
That's right. We are very poor at understanding how our performance is impaired. There was an interesting study actually done in China in 2015 of a simulated manual handling task, and what they showed that as the participants got more and more fatigued, they found it more difficult to identify hazards, and it got to the point where even if they could identify a hazard, they physically just couldn't avoid the hazards in it. I guess we all get to a level of kind of a new normal. You still got to get up, you've got to take the kids to school, you've got to do your day's work, whatever it is, and you do
It's
it, whatever.
zombies going through the motion, muscle memory.
Yeah,
That's it. You just
I'm
got to
over
do it.
here. I'm over here canoodling about a new study using your fatigue questionnaire and your sleep deprivation questionnaire, and coupling it with some of the other people that we've had on the show that actually do testing of fatigue. In the morning or before task or whatever. It'd be interesting to see, um, from your first look at your questionnaire to your second look, you're seeing that people are improving. It'd be interesting to see using some of those other apps, or maybe perhaps if you have an app that's similar that tests fatigue and response times to see if that actually correlates with dexterity, task completion, thought process, etc.
Yeah, so for the two studies that we ran, we created a 60-second alertness and cognition test based on the Stroop test, which again is pretty well known and well validated. So we have that test. We've actually put it into a separate application, which is called My Alertness. So workers can log on at the beginning of the day and do the test. And if they're below their baseline, then we give them a warning that they might be at risk of low alertness on that day.
Love it.
And the employers can see what percentage of people are above or below their baseline on any given day. So you get maybe an early warning, especially let's say if it's been a really warm night, or there's something's happened that there's lots of people feeling really sort of below their baseline on any given day, or they can opt to see the scores for individuals, so they can intervene if someone is well below their baseline at any given point. So yeah, we did
Terrific.
create that.
So let me ask you this. Let's shift focus. I think we've said a good baseline that this is an issue. This is an issue. It affects you not only at home in your home life, it can affect you in your work life. It can be a hazard that can be a causal factor in accidents. So now we have the application. A lot of people are hesitant to reveal too much about themselves in the questionnaire. I didn't think the questionnaire was too intrusive into my private matters, if you will. But how does that data get stored?
So we've built an application where it kind of sits on a server, and then we can download that data and give it straight to the organization, so the employer, so they get instant feedback so they can see the results composite. So they never see anyone individual's results, but they can see all of the composite results for all of the questions. And we can also do a deep dive. So, like Transport for London, we've worked with multiple times, and what we do is we break it down into worker groups, so they can see if there's a particular group that's got a major issue, and then over time we can monitor how they're doing and seeing if interventions they put in place have positive effects. So that's something.
So you strip the personal identifying information from the data that you're feeding back to the company, but there's enough data that the company has to be able to discern trends. Is that what I'm taking?
Exactly that, yes.
Right. I'm kind of with James. I think that going back to our earlier conversation, if workers think that what they're providing to you is going to end up costing them time, money, hours, etc., that they'd be hesitant to either participate at all, or hesitant to provide accurate information. So that's very comforting that that it's kind of an aggregate look at the data as opposed to an individual.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, I guess if organizations want to do a deep dive, then we've built the application that we used called Shift Risk to do the two studies that we've done already. So we've got lots of different tools we can use to help organizations identify kind of levels of fatigue in their staff and which worker groups are particularly at risk.
So how do you handle particularly serious findings? Like I scored pretty low, but overall, I had a score of other factors that sort of offset it. in my other factors, I got an A, Doc. I got an A on the other factors. So,
100%.
it just said you're
Like you're
terrible
back
at
in school.
sleeping, but you're okay, right? But serious findings like make severe sleep insomnia, severe fatigue, severe, sleep apnea. Um, how do you handle those, or particularly if you notice that this worker's working in maybe transportation or a high risk industry where alertness is key? How do you handle those potentially serious findings?
I guess it goes back to the employer. So if we can help them understand which worker groups have got a particular issue, then obviously they can then go and do something about it. They can work with them. We also work with organizations. So if anyone's at risk of any of the 3 sleep disorders we screen for, then we send automated emails and we can work with the organization to put whatever wording in. So it might be that they've got, pathways to get people diagnosed and treated for sleep apnea or insomnia. So, it's about getting people to take that first step. And we've had feedback from employees who were diagnosed or who were deemed at risk through our assessment that have gone on to be diagnosed and treated for sleep apnea, and it's been life-changing for them. So, we can intervene at that level and just give individuals that chance to take that first step.
Very cool. Very
I do
cool.
have a follow-up question. What have you found that works best when problems are identified for changing worker behaviors?
I mean, undoubtedly, the lowest hanging fruit is always education. And doing stuff like that. It's just giving people the information they need to make knowledgeable decisions, basically. So if it can be even just a small change. So it might be that cutting out caffeine, 6 hours before bed rather than having it right up till bed makes a big
Is that
difference
when I
to
need to cut it
one
out?
person.
6 hours before
ideally,
bed?
ideally
Can't have
9
the
hours.
IV drip,
Hey, there
James.
was a question in the survey, Dr. Martin. When's the last caffeinated beverage you have before you go to bed? Hours. And 1 hour, 2 hour, 4
Well,
hours.
you read that while you were slamming a Monster drink?
I did. I
Yeah.
did. I was like, last night I had one right before I went to bed, about 30 minutes. I'm a terrible patient. Terrible patient.
Well, it
Terrible
sounds
patient.
like you got a lot of exciting stuff going on, Marcus. Tell us a little bit more. And we've touched on a lot of the things that Third Pillar does. So you have the survey. You mentioned a couple apps. Can you mention those again and kind of the suite of things that fall under your umbrella?
Yeah, so obviously we've got the sleep health self-assessment, which we've discussed. We're about to bring out our brand new application, which is called Alert Risk. So using the really rich data set that we gathered across the 2 studies, we've built a new biomathematical model. And based on the recommendations and our findings, that application will have 3 modules. So the first is the accident and incident investigation. So to understand to what extent fatigue was a contributory factor. The second is an individual risk assessment. So you can get 15 minutes intervals, assessment of risk for an individual over the rest of their shift. And the third one is a works planning module for kind of common shift patterns, like let's say the 5 on 2 off standard working week, where you can identify where fatigue risk increases in a shift pattern. So hopefully when you're looking at the works you're doing, if you've got something dangerous or monotonous, then you can ideally move it to a time of higher alertness, or if it has to be undertaken at a time of low alertness, you can add in mitigations such as increased supervision. So that's going to be kind of again our big application going forward. And what we want to do is gather loads of data from lots of different organizations in different industries, and then use that to help find, I guess, new findings around fatigue, which we can then share again with our customers. Our shift risk application is the one we built to do the deep dive studies. My Alertness is the application that allows workers to do the alertness and cognition test at the beginning of a shift. And we're also about to build a suite of e-learning modules around different aspects of fatigue. Our first one is going to be driver fatigue. I'm working with a learning expert in Australia to put those together.
Pretty cool. So where do they go? What is your website for people to look you up?
So www.thirdpillarofhealth.com or alert-risk.com.
Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing all this cool stuff with us. I'm sorry that James scored so poorly on it on his
Bad.
questionnaire. I hope it didn't skew your results in any way. He's kind of an anomaly when it comes to sleep. And as I said, he's slamming monster drinks 24/7. So I'm not really sure. Maybe you should throw that data point out.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing these advancements with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Hey, Marcus, as we depart, we had a lot of people listen to our show from different aspects, from executives to frontline workers to safety professionals. What's one piece of advice that you would give to our listeners to get better sleep?
Just make it a priority. It's too easy, I guess, to sacrifice sleep in this day and age. As you say, we can spend time on our phones or just watching streaming videos, gaming, whatever it might be in this day and age. But if people just make getting sufficient good quality sleep a health priority, but also safety and performance priority, then I think that's the best that we can ask for with just one piece of advice.
So you're saying I can't play a round of golf on my Xbox before bed because that qualifies as gaming.
If it's eating into your sleep time, it's never a good thing.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Marcus. And I'm going to go to James to take us out today. But thank you for coming on, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate you joining us. And thank you most of all to all of our listeners. You've been outstanding. We're in our third season. We do this for you. If you want to support the podcast, the best way to do that, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. We're available on all podcast platforms. That means Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Substack, Veriforce's YouTube channel. Hey, our own LinkedIn page. If you're on LinkedIn, you need to go over there to that LinkedIn page for the Risk Matrix podcast, hit that like button, hit that follow button. That way we can stay in contact with you. We post a lot of interesting things over there on our LinkedIn page that are not just episodes. Dr. Martin puts out a tremendous amount of content during the week. Occasionally I have something that somebody might be interested in reading that ends up migrates its way over to the podcast page. So thank you for listening. Thank you for liking and supporting the podcast. We look forward to continued episodes. Thank you, Marcus, because we do this for one goal, which is get workers home safe from hazardous jobs.
And
roll tide, baby. Y'all keep doing what you do. We'll see you next week. Out.
roll tide.